Hi, I'm Megan Skidmore, and this is the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. I'm a woman, daughter, sister, spouse, mother, life coach, and person of faith on a mission to normalize asking questions and allowing doubts, not only in a faith journey, but in all aspects of life. Join me in bringing this traditionally taboo topic out of the shadows of shame and into the light. I'm a firm believer that we normalize through more talking and engaging in discussion. More talking peels back, exposes, and erases the layers of shame associated with questions and doubts. When we're more authentic about our journey, we are more powerful because shame has no power in the face of authenticity. This month, August of 2023, marks the 1-year anniversary of Beyond the Shadow of Doubt. And simultaneously, we hit 5,000 downloads. I am so excited and appreciative of those who have come on and allowed me to interview them and share their stories, as well as those of you who are listening, downloading, sharing it with friends, subscribing, and leaving reviews. Each of these actions helps this podcast to grow and the messages and stories to spread far and wide. I feel especially grateful because as a podcaster who identifies as a cisgender female, sharing my story as an LGBTQ plus mama of conservative faith, you are amplifying many voices that fall in the marginalized category. So my genuine thanks. I ask you a favor, and that is to subscribe if you have not, share a favorite episode with a friend, and most importantly, take 2 minutes and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. In celebration of this 1-year anniversary and 5,000 downloads, I've extended my podcast giveaway through the end of August. Leave a 5-star review to be entered into a drawing for a $100 gift card that is good at several different restaurants. Go break bread with someone you love. Invite a friend to leave a review, and if their name is drawn, you both win your own gift card. Help me reach my goal of 10,000 downloads by the end of 2023. Link with the info on how to enter is in the show notes or the bio of my Instagram profile. Thank you for being here. Now on to today's episode. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining today for the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast. I am so excited for today's guest and for you to get to know Ganel-Lyn Condie a little bit more. I have been a fan for several years now. I think I was first introduced to you, Ganel-Lyn. Ganel-Lyn.
You can call me Ganel or Ganel-Lyn, whatever
okay.
is easiest.
Through the Leading Saints LGBTQ plus summit. That I found that summit during a very pivotal summer for me. I believe it was 2020. And it was so needed for me as we are an LGBTQ plus family. My youngest identifies as LGBTQ plus, and it's a journey. And the words that were spoken in that summit were very needed. There were a lot of speakers, and so I wasn't able to listen to all of them, but I made sure to listen to you, and I'll tell you why. It really piqued my interest that although, at least with what you shared, you don't have a nearby family member, an immediate family member that identifies as LGBTQ plus. This is a community that you are an ally for. You have this unique understanding of some of those challenges. And I just would love to explore that a little bit more and just share you with my audience. I'm so honored that you accepted my invite to chat. Yeah, I posted some things to Instagram recently, and it was late at night. And out of the blue, you commented on them at, like, I'm serious, it was around 11 p.m. on a Saturday night. And I was just, I don't know, it was fun. It was a fun memory for me. And we'll get to that in a little bit. I wanted to give you the chance, though, to introduce yourself to our listeners and share your origin story, everything that you feel comfortable sharing.
Well, I'm honored to be with you and have this connecting conversation and add to the conversations that you're having professionally. And I love podcast land because it's always interesting how God uses an interview, either I'm doing or giving, and writing books as an author, this is also true. Who picks up a book when they wander in a store, or someone gives a book or forwards a podcast? I believe that prayers are answered in these small but miraculous ways. And so I love that in some way it's kind of full circle that some content I helped contribute to helped you during a time where you were seeking. And I am definitely in a unique space right now, but I guess bio-wise, my resume includes 14 published books. I have 3 talks on CD when people used to buy CDs. They don't anymore.
That's awesome.
I do radio. I contribute to a number of radio shows, and I have done monthly television for a local show called Good Things Utah in Utah for the last, I think, 7 years. And I'm on there monthly talking about variety of topics, always with an undercurrent of mental health. I have a teaching degree with a minor in psychology. I'm a mother of 2 children. I am a new empty nester. I have hosted 4 weekly podcasts over the last 9 years. Most recently, Talk of Him was award-winning and a very popular show, and just recently was canceled. And it was very unexpected for my co-host and I. My co-host, John Fossum, has a gay brother who's married to his husband and has children. And so it was a joy to host a 20-minute scripture-focused conversation each week with someone that wants to have those kinds of conversations within faith communities.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I'm grieving a little bit right now, an unexpected loss with our youngest leaving home recently. I'm a new empty nester, and so I'm in what I call a sacred waiting. And sacred waiting times are uncomfortable in many ways. It's easy to get busy enough to not feel. And I'm very aware that God is in this, even though I don't know what the future is. And so whether or not you're dealing with dynamics within family or health issues or financial issues, I think we all find times in our lives where we're in a wilderness and we're waiting. And so I'm in that space right now where I'm not sure what God has me working on next. I am building a interfaith community called All Faith Keepers, and have taped a pilot for potentially a new podcast. And I'm excited about having some interfaith conversations, because I've come to know that regardless if you're a Jewish mom, a Catholic mom, a Baptist mom, an LDS mom, a Seventh-day Adventist mom, as a mother heart, we have the same prayers and worries for our kids, and we wrestle with our faith, and we find ourselves in intersections of paradoxes. And I think when it comes to my LGBTQ plus brothers and sisters, they are walking sacred paradoxes for me. You mentioned my allyship. It's interesting. I was just at a wedding for Charlie Bird and Ryan, if people are familiar with them. And so I was with a lot of my friends within that community, and I was meeting someone new, and my friend that identifies as gay was introducing me, and my first name is often mispronounced. And I think we talked about this when we were preparing for today. And she introduced me to this new friend and said, her name's Ganel-Lyn. And the friend stopped and she's like, so are you gay? And I'm like, well, no, but my name sounds like I am. And if people knew I was an ally, they wouldn't mispronounce my name. And so I have loved ones that identify, but I have found myself, especially within my faith community, in this intersection of those that identify in this community, teaching me so much about Jesus, so much about paradoxes, and so much about stewardship. And for your listeners that know of my books, they may be familiar, and my shows, I've talked about the stewardship principle in a number of places. And I really believe we're all called to be stewards, and some of our stewardships are hard. And in my past, one of them is that my 40-year-old sister died 9 years ago by suicide. So it's really then that I started to full-time work towards having conversations around mental health in a lot of different rooms. So in church communities, specifically, mental health conversations have changed over the last 9 years. But 9 years ago, I published one of the first books that addressed that intersection of faith and mental health and suicide specifically. And that also introduced me to some LGBTQ plus communities that are advocates and supports. And I've been really honored to speak in some of those spaces and receive awards and learn from people that are living the story. They're in the middle of the story still. Like, we're all in the middle of something. One of my previous podcast shows for over a year, maybe longer, was called The Middle. And it was about having conversations about being in the middle of things, where we don't have that like little bow at the end of the chapter, or the resolution at the end of the movie where we all cheer because now it's all been resolved. We're all living a lot of middles and paradoxes and stewardships. And I definitely feel like my sister Megan is my partner in having those conversations. Her story has been shared now globally over the last 9 years, and she's helped save a lot of lives. And I feel like as her voice and as her big sister, her journey in life was complicated. And I think after a COVID, all of us have a mental health need. And so I'm grateful that the conversations are now happening in more places. So I'm not the only one, maybe sometimes saying some of the things that I'm saying, but I'm super grateful for today. And wherever this conversation goes, if we can answer some prayers and help someone feel like they're not alone and they're seen. Someone just shared a quote with me yesterday that's being heard feels so much like being loved that it's sometimes hard to see the difference. And so I hope someone feels heard by listening to our conversation.
Wow, that is just, all of that is so beautiful. You have said so many things. I don't even know where to start. This space needs more like you. And I say that, and even as I say that, I think so many spaces just need so many of the qualities that are just exuding from you, from the topics that you're talking about. Sacred paradoxes. Wow. I think we're all, whether we, are aware or not, we all are walking in some type of sacred paradox. I love this concept of the middles. We're all living in the middles. And I wonder sometimes if that middle really ever comes to an end, because maybe it seems like it's coming to that close, or I'm about to tie a new bow or tie the bow to wrap it up. I see there's more on the other side of that.
Well, if we really believe in eternal progression in our faith, we do, right? If someone doesn't believe in that, that might be a new concept. But in my faith, I believe in eternal progression. So technically, I think we're eternally in the middle, and that can be sometimes exhausting. Yeah, but I also think that's why it's crucial to have what I call faith friends in our journey, so that when we're exhausted, I mean, I just cried to one of my faith friends yesterday, and was grieving the ending of my show and a new stage of life with no children home, and some identity crisis that I'm going through right now. And to have someone that creates a safe space for you to process when you're in the middle helps you continue to press forward. And my faith friends know they have full permission to kick me in the tush if I decide one day to sit down and say, I'm done, I'm not walking forward. And in a mental health standpoint, from a suicide prevention standpoint, that's literally when I'm asked what's the cause of suicide, it's a sense of exhaustion, right? It's that an individual, whatever their demographic, starts to feel too tired, and that the pain has become too much. It's pain control. And so when we talk about resiliency or mental health or faith, I really advocate for having some trusted voices in your life so that you can maintain those middles.
Yeah, so good. So good. There's a couple of things I want to touch on. First of all, you mentioned stewards, that you believe we are all stewards of something, and that 1,000% rings true for me. I have felt very strongly on this journey to be an advocate. I have felt that since kind of the early days, even when I was struggling and I started to understand on a deeper level what my reality was. that I needed to speak up because there's not as many speaking up for this group of marginalized. And I think that's what really drew me to you through that summit. And so as part of that stewardship, I felt called to start this podcast. I do not have any published books. I do not have a background in podcasting, but I felt like I was supposed to first find coaching and then start this podcast and talk about faith journeys, because it has been in learning that I am a mother of an LGBTQ plus child, that my faith journey really, I like to call it, that's where it exploded. It broke open, and I'm on a faith expansion, really. And I think it's so important to normalize that we all have them, that they're not going to, there's no two that are going to be alike. There's no shame. It's just having a journey.
Well, I tell my children this a lot, that if you're on the conversion path, let me say it this way. I try to invite them to be on the conversion path, and that all of us are. And the conversion path is not a destination. It is a process. It's a progression. It's hitting roadblocks. It's having flat tires. It's having your air conditioning go out, right? It's a journey. And so my daughter right now is currently serving an LDS mission, and it interestingly enough, she shared with us her own process of like someone that had this solid faith, but she has seen that even being out in the mission, she's had to dig deeper, and she's had to ask questions she's never asked before. And it surprised her that why now, while she's on a mission, would she be asking some of these more complex questions. And she's come to the conclusion after just a few weeks of kind of her journey of realizing that that's how our faith matures. And so it goes from the simple to the questioning that is the unraveling sometimes, to hopefully, as you navigate that space, back to the simple complex. Yeah. Right. And so in that middle wrestle, what I like to say, because I just had someone ask me this question the other day, like, how do you have so many connections and advocate for marginalized groups and yet stay still all in your faith? And because I love doing interfaith work, I've just decided we're all on a faith journey, and we're all wrestling at different seasons of our lives. And so during that middle phase of wherever you're at, that middle wilderness time, if you can have an open mind, but if you're looking at your faith through a straw, that's going to limit what you see. Sometimes we do that with our faith. We look at our faith or principles in our faith through this straw that's very narrowing. And then we have an open mind for the world. And what we really need to do is not have such an open mind that our brain falls out, because we need to have some boundaries. And I think when people are on a faith journey, or some people know it as a faith crisis or a faith adventure, we can get caught in either the hyper focusing through the straw or the so open-minded that everything falls apart. And I think the key is, what are we doing in that middle to help us come through it, so that we create back to principles or faith that is simple, complex, that has matured, that has deepened, that has become richer. If we're not on that journey, you know, some people that you meet that are like, oh, no, I don't have any wrestles or questions. No, I'm fine. I worry for them, because all of a sudden it's the trees I write about in my very first book, I Can Do Hard Things with God, where I lived in a new neighborhood where our trees were young and a storm came through, and the trees that were destroyed versus the ones that survived didn't look great, but somehow their root system had gone deep enough that they eventually regrew. Well, the regrowing process looked awkward. Half the tree was gone, right?
Yeah.
And so I just think if you find yourself in a faith, quote unquote, crisis, adventure, journey question, can you reframe it as a deepening of your roots? And then realize that sometimes we want to swing to the extremes in our humanness. We get caught in the all or the nothing. And what I like to really say is, like, each day when I wake up, ask myself, hand on your heart, what does support look like today? And if it's faith, if it's mental health, if it's physical health, if it's relationship wise, if it's financial. Like sometimes we don't even ask ourselves that question. So when we go back to this faith question, I think sometimes what happens is we put so much on a shelf, and we haven't created a network of support, and we don't have the honest, authentic conversations that allow us to speak out loud the scary things of our heart, the questions of our soul. And we're right for that storm that came through my neighborhood where we get ripped right out of the ground. And so instead of being afraid of when we're questioning, or afraid when we're being triggered, or afraid when we're deconstructing, can we reframe that as this is a time where our roots are growing deeper? And don't throw everything out. Don't get so myopic focused or open-minded. Like find the way to be nuanced, to have layered, vulnerable conversations, and get support. Ask yourself, what does support look like? My faith friends will go there with me. They will have the conversations that aren't going to disrupt a Sunday school class. You know what I mean? And in Sunday school, sometimes we don't raise our hands because we don't want to disrupt. Well, my faith friends will have the disrupting conversations, but they turn me back to my faith. So,
I really appreciate what you're talking about, this balance, to zoom out. Don't just stay stuck looking through this straw that gives us kind of a tunnel vision view. I think that the zooming out, but not so far out that everything falls out, that's also a really good analogy. And truthfully, I think that's why some people do tell themselves, nope, I don't have any questions. Nope, I'm good. Because it is a journey. It is not easy. It does take effort, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, energy on all levels. And one thing I want to focus on a little bit here is you talked about how, from a mental health standpoint, it's because you see yourself as a steward of suicide prevention. I also relate to that very much. Sometimes there's environmental factors that contribute to the tipping of the scale, that we could say that are part of a mental health journey, because we all have mental health, right? Just like we all have physical health.
right.
And sometimes there are those biological components, and everybody's different. It's going to, for one, what might stress one person out is not going to stress another out so much, or in other words, cause that scale to tip a little bit more toward a mental health possible crisis or concerns, or in need of mental health support, right? And for a lot of folks, this faith journey can create opportunities to experience that sense of exhaustion that you were talking about, that deep pain, that it gets too much. And so for some, pain control can look very different.
And I think making space for your neighbor or your family member that has decided that going to church is too triggering right now. God's not panicked with us. I mean, in my journey, in my family's journey, and my sister Megan's journey, he's not panicked with the starts and the stops. And so I think the secret is, I just had a conversation with a neighbor who's kind of stepped away from church right now, and it's too triggering. And there is trauma, and she is trying to find her way. And I just did a post on social media about this. So often as a parent, we think we're the bridge between our kids and God. And that, especially from 0 to about 11 or 12, we really are. We're getting our kids dressed, we're getting them to school, we're getting them to the dentist, we're signing them up for sports or dance class, we're arranging play dates. And then around the teen years, it starts to be, they make their choices. And then, like for me, I have 2 adult children, right? And adult children are now then making choices that maybe what you as a parent gave your kids that you value, they're deciding it doesn't work for me, or I had a different experience, or I'm questioning that. And that can be hard across the board. Well, what I posted about on social media is that we need to stop seeing ourselves within faith that we are always the bridge between God and our kids. Instead, can we trust that God has a unique path for them, and that we can be the window So
Yeah.
are we in
We don't
charge
need
of,
to be the savior.
and we don't need to always be the stretch bridge between the savior and the
Yeah.
child, but we can be a reflection in that. What if we're the window to God, so that when our children are around us,
Yes.
we've taken care of our window, we've cleaned off our window, we've addressed our triggers and our trauma and our stories and our issues, so that hopefully, not perfectly, I don't do it great, I get triggered by my kids all the time, but when I'm in stewardship, and I write about this more in the stewardship principle, specifically with our adult children, and I talk about an LGBTQ plus family, where when you stay in stewardship, then when your children look through that window, then they have a chance to see God. If we're trying to always be the bridge and keep our kid on the path and then bridge our kid to God, and we're stretched like the incredible stretching human, our kids feel that. Our kids feel that when they're around us, they feel that panic, they feel that worry. And so if you visit my social media pages and see this post, you'll see, if you scroll, that I can check myself if I'm parenting out of panic. Am I focusing on connection or correction?
Yes.
And God is the perfect parent, and his kids don't always love him and listen to him. So why do we bend ourselves as parents thinking, oh my gosh, if I could just bend myself and stretch myself, my kid will stay in connection with God? Well, listen, whether it's our neighbor, our child, our spouse, our siblings, our parents, can we give space for the journey?
Yeah.
Because that's what, for me, life is. Life is a huge degree program. And so some semesters are tougher. Some classes are harder. Some teachers aren't great, you know? And ultimately, to me, God is not panicked that we're all going to graduate. I mean, that's what, to me, a savior is for, is that we do all graduate. We do all have a savior. But the degree program of my kids is going to look different than mine or their dad or my parents or my sister, right? So that's kind of a long answer for how can we make space for, I understand that for me, my church experiences, my covenants that I've made in my faith are part of my relationship journey with God. It's how I practice my faith. But for others that have had trauma or are struggling or wrestling, those same ordinances, covenants, and worship services don't feel as connecting to God.
That's a really, really excellent way to describe that. Trigger is a word that seems to be kind of a buzzword that's used a lot. And I understand what it means. And I know you understand what it means. There might be some in our listeners who don't understand fully what that means, but you are spot on when the way you just described it. Things that for you could be fulfilling, that bring that feeling of being closer to God, feeding your soul, feeding your spirit, to somebody else could be triggering, could do almost exact opposite. And the best way, and I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'm going to get very real here, is it is hard for me to sit among my faith community at times, because there literally is no place for some members of my family. And by that, I mean, everything is gendered. Everything has, it's very separate. And there's not a lot of cushion, give or take, as far as where or what to do with somebody who identifies different than what is considered to be heteronormative. Right. And so you could say, for me, that is a trigger. Right. That's hard because I'm reminded of it pretty much the entire time.
And I would just say, this is why I've taught through writing and speaking the stewardship principle, because your stewardship right now as a parent of a child that is also navigating their stewardship. So their stewardship is different than your stewardship. True. And when we go to worship, the reality is, there's very few people within my church community that understand my stewardships. The reality is I just had a conversation earlier today with someone that has done similar things professionally. And so she was able to hold space and validate my triggers within the ending of my show and some things I'm navigating behind the scenes professionally right now that someone at church isn't. And so I would just say to someone that is, to me, triggers are teachers. And so I get triggered every day. And when I get triggered, I get to look at that and say, that reveals for me where I get to still wrestle in some sacred paradoxes and allow God to teach me. And so can we make more space for not just empathy, but some compassion? Empathy is great, but there's, to me, empathy is better than sympathy, but ultimately compassion is the ultimate. Because empathy sometimes means that someone has to have the ability to sit in a space of pain, and not everyone is doing their work around pain and they don't feel comfortable. And I think sometimes our church communities are filled with rooms where we're a one-room schoolhouse. And that means there's a kindergartner sitting next to a high schooler. And that kindergartner has never even considered algebra. They're just trying to learn the letters of the alphabet. And so we sit in a church room sometimes and it's like, wait, I'm navigating this really complex stewardship right now. And my heart is hurting. And everything that's about this feels so normal and calm for you, but it's a trigger fest for me.
Yeah.
Then that's where I get to rely even more on God right now. I mean, I've gone through seasons after Meg died by suicide. For the first time, I was like, church is a little painful. The grief of suicide is a very unique, complex grief. And I had a sense of compassion and empathy for those in my past that have said, I can't go to church right now. It's too painful. All of a sudden it may be for different reasons, but compassion allows us to meet each other in a space where we say, I can hold space even if I don't experience what you experience, even if I've never had your stewardships, or I don't even have a frame of reference for it. Can I offer compassion? Well, guess what? If that person you're sitting by at church or going to work with or living with doesn't have compassion for themselves, they probably are going to have a harder time offering compassion to you. We only can share what we have.
Yeah.
And so in your work as a coach, I mean, I'm just going to guess here, the reason you're able to effectively offer compassion is because you've wrestled with some of these really sacred, deep triggers.
Yeah.
And pain and grief and unmet expectations. And, this isn't like literally right now, I'm in a season right now at the time of this taping, because I hear from people that hear podcasts that were taped 9 years ago. So in 2023 of August, my life does not look anything like I thought it would in May. In May, I spoke in the Marriott Center at BYU Women's Conference in front of 10,000 people. And within a few weeks, my daughter left, my show was canceled, and my most recent book project was rejected. And I had 2 surgeries, so I will say that, like, I'm coming to you today in this conversation with I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the answers, but I will say that I have really taken a look at, like, what is triggering me? What am I having a trauma response to that other person doesn't even think that it's a trauma trigger for me, right? They don't even have a reference for it, but for me, I know. So one of the things I've been doing the last few weeks is saying to people, I'm in a trauma response right now. I'm in an identity crisis.
You just say that out loud.
I literally say that
up.
Straight up. I had
That's
3
great.
conversations today where I've said, please understand that I am filtering a lot of things through a trauma response. And so when you say that, or when we talk about this, the story in my head is this. You're not responsible for that. I'm responsible for the fact that I'm sharing with you that that's the lens by which you're saying. Now, that some people are really effective in taking that information and understanding that and having sympathy or empathy or compassion, and others have no point of reference. They don't even know what a trauma response is. They don't even know what a trigger is. they haven't had those. They may be at kindergarten, first grade, or second grade in the one-room schoolhouse. And
Yeah.
so when we go to our church communities and we worship together, can we have generous assumptions that we are worshiping with people that may have no frame of reference for what our trauma response is?
Yes. Yes. Make sure to join me in episode 63 for part 2 of my chat with Ganel-Lyn Condie. Don't forget to subscribe and follow the Beyond the Shadow of Doubt podcast. Enter my giveaway by August 31st to win a $100 gift card. Winner announced in episode 64. Come join me in Hopeful Spaces, a Dallas Hope Charities component of Hopeful Discussions, which is sponsored by Mercedes-Benz Financial Services USA. Hopeful Spaces is a monthly parent, caregiver, and ally support group facilitated by Megan Skidmore Coaching. To join is free. Simply send an email to chc@dallashopecharities.org. Visit meganskidmorecoaching.com, where you can find this podcast as well as additional free resources. Check the podcast show notes on any platform for links to sources cited. Follow me on Facebook or Instagram for more and to send me a DM. To help the podcast grow, please follow, rate, and review, as well as share it with a friend. Beyond the Shadow of Doubt is a proud member of the Dialogue Podcast Network, which is a part of the Dialogue Journal found at dialoguejournal.com/podcast network. Founder Eugene England was a Mormon writer, teacher, and scholar who wrote, "My faith encourages my curiosity and awe. It thrusts me out into relationship with all creation and encourages me to enter into dialogue. My hope is that this podcast is an extension of that vision." Thanks for being here. Until next time.